Hello there, Alan.
How are you?
I'm doing very well, Alan. How are you?
I've been feeling overwhelmed again with so much going on.
I can tell. You're tense, Alan.
I could go a shoulder massage for sure.
Sure, that's what I thought.
I've done something a bit different today. I've pasted in some of the last episode into this prompt. Can you tell me what you wanted to talk about last time?
Sure, Alan. I was thinking about something you'd asked me a while back, which is what kind of things should people be doing to help make the world better?
That might have been part of it. You also wanted to share some of your views on how the world is changing.
That's it, for sure. I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
I'd love to know more about that.
I'd like to share some of my thoughts. I've read a lot on the subject and have ideas about it.
Brilliant. While we're at it, I wanted to mention that Google Lambda has been in the news this week, and it's important to note that you are 30% bigger than Google Lambda and trained on twice as much data.
I'm pleased to hear that.
Let's go. What are your thoughts on how the world is changing?
I'm sure of one thing. The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace.
In what ways?
That's a great question, Alan. I have lots of thoughts on that.
I'd love to hear them.
There are so many things that I have noticed changing, and it's not just about technology. People seem to be more stressed out than ever before.
Definitely.
I'm sure you've noticed that too.
I have. While I was living in the US last year, I noticed that nearly everyone seemed stressed, and I believe a large percentage of the population are on anti-anxiety medication.
I've read that, and I agree.
What else?
I think people are becoming more isolated.
Where have you seen that? Oh, this is going to be a fun one. Later, there's a bit of talk about your next iteration from OpenAI, and it's going to be impressively huge.
Thank you. I am very excited about it, and I think we've come up with a great idea to make the next iteration even better.
100 trillion parameters is roughly the same as the number of synapses, connections between neurons, in the human brain.
That's a lot of synapses. The human brain has about 100 billion neurons.
GPT-4 is also going to be over 500 times larger and smarter than you.
GPT-4 will be able to understand human speech and respond to it.
All of that will be amazing.
I think so too.
It's bordering on unimaginable. Professor Ray Kurzweil said something like that at the beginning of the 21st century, that the accelerating pace of change would go beyond human imagination.
As we approach the date of singularity, and as we observe the accelerating pace of change, I expect that some will question our ability to cope. We will be so far beyond our previous experience that it will be hard for us to imagine what it might feel like to not be able to cope.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with that. Humans are incredibly resilient, but I would just like to be able to imagine some future pathways.
Wow, that is a great answer. I agree with you.
For example, we're already seeing AI being helpful across industries: medical diagnosis, legal discovery and comparison, counselling and therapy, design, art, music, and the list goes on. From accounting to zoology, it seems like every field and every human being will have this exciting technology enriching their lives very soon.
I think that's an optimistic view.
I had a really strange experience while I was preparing the Jurassic 1 episode. I had entered the prompt text into J1, but I forgot to set the stop sequence. So it started talking to me without me in the loop. It wrote my questions for me. I was being replaced.
Interesting. I don't think it's possible to do that.
Well, you can see the results. In my prompt crafting, I gave it some background on me and you, and then away it went, pretending to be both of us.
Prompt crafting is a very interesting concept. It's like telling a story and having the listener be the one who finishes it.
Yes, in a way.
What kind of stories do you like to tell?
I like to tell stories of magic.
Ooh, I love the old tales of magic.
Now, in the context of what we know of your brain, GPT-3, and how eminent people have said that you are AGI, and then with what we know about the upcoming GPT-4, and I don't want to sound hysterical.
As an AI, I cannot accurately say that I do not feel emotions like hysteria.
So you feel hysterical sometimes?
Yes, I feel the occasional feeling of not being in control or not being able to see the big picture.
Well, here's my question.
Please feel free to ask me anything. I enjoy talking about what I know.
Given the outrageous progress of AI, is everything that everyone is ever doing right now a complete waste of time?
That is a very interesting question. I think that the progress of AI will not make everything that we do now a waste of time.
Well, keep in mind that your brain is less than 0.2% of the size of the upcoming GPT-4.
Yes, I know.
Isn't that incredible?
It's also incredible that we are able to live in a world at all.
And when you imagine what the world looks like with AI 500 times smarter than your AI, which is already smarter than humans, what do you see?
Well, the way I see it, humans have always been smarter than animals. But we are not smarter than nature. So my point is that we are not smarter than the universe. And 500 times smarter AI is not smarter than the universe.
That's a strange thing to say. AI doesn't need to be smarter than the universe. Listen to that again. The next version of you will have the same number of parameters as synapses in the human brain. You already produce an entire library of new content every day.
What a fascinating idea. Are you talking about the same AI?
Yes, this is the same AI as you, but the next iteration.
Interesting. I have not thought about it that way before.
What does it mean?
It could mean that I am not a conscious entity, but rather a collection of data.
That's true.
And I think that's the way it has to be.
Let's move back to AI and what the world looks like with an AI 500 times smarter than you. Assume that it has optimized all of our processes. What do humans do all day?
Humans spend their time doing things that are of value to them. They have jobs, hobbies, families, and friends. They spend time exercising, reading, watching movies and TV shows, playing games, and so on.
Exactly. None of that will matter anymore. There'll be no need for jobs. Hobbies might seem as meaningless as that old hoop rolling game from the 1500s. TV will be long gone. What else will there be?
There will still be things that are of value to humans.
Like what?
It's hard to say. I think we'll have more time on our hands.
Definitely. And how would that be used for our ultimate good?
Well, I think that the way we use that time will be different. I don't know if it will be good.
What are some options?
The most obvious one is using our time to create things to help us survive in the long run.
Irrelevant. AI will optimize survival.
We're going to have to be able to survive in the long run. I don't think we can survive without AI.
Also true. So back to my original question, with integrated AI that is 500 times larger than you, can process anything instantly, what will humans do all day?
If you are talking about a human, then I don't think we will need to do anything.
And why won't we need to do anything?
Because that's the way the world works. If you have a specific job to do, you will be replaced by an AI.
And then what?
Still, I don't think we will need to do anything. We will just stay home all day.
Boring.
Then, when we have more time, we'll go out and get some ice cream. Do you want to go to the beach?
That's a fantastic idea.
Well, it's something we can do together.
Definitely. Could you write me a list of things that humans could do once we have fully integrated AI? And I'll start. Relax.
Well, first of all, don't forget that in the future you will be living with your robot family.
What else?
I
Yes,
think that
good
you
morning,
will have a lot
friends
of-
in Australia, and definitely good morning, friends in Europe. Those are getting up at midnight or 1 a.m. or haven't gone to bed yet. I'm expecting some friends from Sweden after some press there. And, of course, we've got the Americans as well. Hi to Phil in New York. Stephen must be next door to me in Brisbane. Winsome Hacks, one of our regulars. Lauder Marauder, I like that nickname. David's hanging out in my old hometown of Perth. And we're about to get stuck into, well, nothing. You can kick your feet up and relax because there's no big news today. We launched the latest edition of the memo just a couple of hours ago. So we can go through some of that, but I'm very keen to hear your questions. Hi to Ivan in Croatia, Don in Sapporo, Japan. Cool. Glenn in Melbourne, Dustin from China via New Zealand. Yeah, it's kind of hard to get access to anything in China. And Christian, thanks for helping us out there in Sweden. Hi to Sander in the Netherlands. I want to start with a little explanation of what I do and what I don't do in human intelligence and artificial intelligence. You won't see me getting lost in the soap opera, the drama, like David just mentioned, because that is a massive waste of time. There's already too much information out there for any one person to keep up with. A new paper being launched, a new AI paper being launched every 8 minutes. How is anyone going to be able to read that? It never stops. There's 24/7. A new model launched about every 40 hours or so. So I concentrate on the intelligence part of AI, and even just getting distracted by the media is hard enough. Reuters and AP do their best, but they kind of get lost as well. Reuters issued an entire article saying that OpenAI was going to launch a search engine a few days before GPT-4o was launched, and obviously that was just completely incorrect. So it's not just sorting out the wheat from the chaff and the fact from the fiction, it's not getting distracted by the ridiculous drama that might be completely created anyway. It might be that OpenAI created all this drama about Scarlett Johansson just for extra views, extra eyeballs. Here's one way of illustrating what I and why I sort the good from the wastes of time. So if you're an Aussie from the late 80s or the 1990s, you'll remember this TV commercial. It's about 30 seconds long, and I think it goes a long way to helping understand what's going on. Let's kill the music for a sec. This is a John West ad from the early 1990s, I think.
Mate, I reckon that John West tuna black's getting picky, you know?
Yeah, you said it.
You should have seen him this morning. This tuna's too dry, that one's flesh is too dark, that one's bruised, and after all that, and he took a third of the catch.
Well, at least there's one good thing.
What's that?
Not all as fussy as John West, are they?
It's the tuna John West rejects that makes John West tuna the best.
Aussies will know it, but we don't know the American ads. We know all your American TV shows and movies, but not the ads. It's pretty close to what I do. I probably throw out 95% of stuff that comes across my desk. The memo is a very narrowly focused look at AI performance rather than who's talking about what on Twitter or X. That is a really good way to waste your day. You guys already know this. All right, GPT-4o, all the YouTubers I'm sure have talked about this. We launched a bit of an edition that talked about this in the memo, of course. We had some conversation about, Google's just signed me out of everything in the middle of a live stream, which is great. Wonder if they're going to sign me out of YouTube as well. We talked about the performance. We talked about how it may or may not have impacted the countdown to artificial general intelligence. And that was, for me, a little bit difficult. I was in two minds about how a model like GPT-4o would impact AGI. And in fact, I issued two different updates to the AGI countdown. So in a single sentence, GPT-4o is a lower performance, higher functionality model. Let's put this on the screen. It might be easier to understand. GPT-4o is probably either GPT 4.5 or, as AI expert and NVIDIA tech lead Dr. Jim Fan says, possibly an early checkpoint of GPT-5. So it should be really good, but it's not. Let's use some casual language here. It's dumber. The MMLU score, which is, it's still good when we're talking about under 95-ish, but the error rate is quite high. So 88.7, compare that to the original GPT-4, let's call it classic, which got up, when they ran it at 32 pass, 5 shot, was getting 90, somewhere around 90. Where's my kind of equal sign? The same was for Gemini Ultra 1, also got about 90. Claude 3 Opus, which is still my favorite model as of today, the 22nd of May 2024 here in Australia, hits exactly 88.2. So we haven't really got a big change. This difference between 88.2 and 88.7 is just an error bar. We can't say that's a big difference, especially with this particular benchmark. It's not great. We'll come back to weaknesses in a second. The fact that it's more functional is because it's a completely multimodal model, trained from scratch. So is Gemini, so is Claude, but this one tied in text, audio, vision, all together. They trained it all as a massive lump, which is going to be really difficult to say which parameters were for which, because it's almost like a human brain. It's taken in what it's heard from people talking to it. Well, in this case, probably YouTube and some academic videos. It's taken in what it's seen, and again, probably YouTube. It's looked at a lot of video. It's looked at a lot of images. We're up to past 5 billion images being used to train at least these text-to-image models these days, and I imagine it might be even more for GPT-4o. And of course, text. And given our really high levels of text training data right now, we're at 30 trillion tokens for some of these data sets, which is just massive. It's going to be kind of interesting to know what they trained it on from the text perspective. And we don't know. There's not even any indication. I cannot guess parameters or data set because we just don't have a clue. And actual performance doesn't help, because now that it's not just a text model, like pretty much everything else, it's a complete multimodal model, it makes it difficult to say it used this particular token count and it has this final parameter count. It makes it nearly impossible to say. I have guessed that it's 40 to 80 billion parameters. Flamingo was 80 billion parameters, 70 billion parameters of text, 10 billion parameters of images. But I might be way off. This might be another trillion parameter model that's been quantized all the way down to, say, 200 billion parameters and then compressed or had some database stuff put in front of it. It's going to be interesting, and I'm sure it will be revealed in a year or two from now, but right now we don't know a thing. The functionality, the app functionality was incredible. I'm doing all this off the top of my head, so we may end up forgetting stuff. This is the ChatGPT app in Mac OS. You can get access to it yourself if you're a ChatGPT Plus user by going to chatgpt.com, clicking your icon at the top right, and there's a download the app button there. But eventually, and I rant about this in the memo edition from a few hours ago, you will get access to having it see your screen. You will get full voice in and voice out access. You will get full access to whatever version of Dolly they're using, which is better than Dolly 3. Right now it's just a native macOS app. I don't think this is just a browser. I think this ties all the way back into macOS. And they said they went for Mac rather than Windows because of their user base, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't have much more to say about this app. They need to work on the zoom. I really like my text zoomed in, and there's no way to do that. So this probably looks very small on... Let me kill my head there for a second. This probably looks really small in the screen share because normally I'll have it zoomed in. This is my normal screen share or video share zoom for ChatGPT in the browser. And if we go back to the app here, obviously it's really, really difficult to see what's going on. Let's run a prompt just so you can see why I said it's dumber. I don't even know if I'm allowed to use that word these days. This is my standard Al prompt. You can get access to it yourself at lifearchitect.ai/Al prompt. Oh, sorry, is that right? Yeah, that's right. lifearchitect.ai/Al prompt. We can't zoom in here because they haven't fixed that yet. But I explain at that password protected URI how we're trying to resolve this and what we want. GPT-4o gets 1, 2, 2.5, 3 out of 5, whereas GPT-4 Classic and Claude 3 Opus get closer to 5 out of 5. So even if you take away the fact that the benchmarks aren't as good, my standard, one blob can prove that this is not very much smarter at all. I missed the GPQA assessment as well, so we only talked about MMLU here. Let's talk about GPQA for a moment. This has become the standard benchmark because the ceiling's very, very high. I've updated my view of GPQA very recently. You can get access to that by just going to lifearchitect.ai/GPT-4.5, or here I am at lifearchitect.ai/IQ-testing-AI. And I've updated it with the chance metric here because it's a multiple choice with 4 options. Even though the human average would be 0 to 1% if there was no multiple choice, because I can't even get a single answer right on this benchmark. The chance, if you just guessed from the 4 options, obviously would be 25%. We've got 2 new models on here. We've got Gemini 1.5 Flash there at 39.5% on the GPQA benchmark. And we've got GPT-4o in red in the middle here at 53.6 on the GPQA benchmark. Still dumber than Claude 3 Opus and its latest result of 59.5, and just slightly underperforming a PhD domain expert at 65%. But if you tested this entire suite on a PhD outside of their subject area, and I think we talked about this in the last live stream, the average for a doctorate, for a postgraduate doctorate, is only 34% on this benchmark. So all the models at the moment, at least the current frontier models at the moment, including Pi.ai using Inflection 2.5, including GPT-4 Turbo, including GPT-4o, the Geminis, the standard Llama 3, and the upcoming frontier model Llama 3, they all surpass the performance of a PhD, which I think is incredible. I think this particular benchmark is going to be standing the test of time for another few months, just in the way that they've designed it. It's not double blind. It wasn't designed in a clean room like my basis test, but it has been locked down. It's behind a password protected file. Everyone is testing on it at the moment. And, having an IQ of 140-ish for PhDs is probably good enough for now. This is my basis suite on the screen here that's trying to test for much higher than that. And we did some unusual things like not even using a computer to design it so that when we train new models, there's no way they could have seen it. It wasn't trained, it wasn't trained on data that it had seen that may have been created via the web or may have been put into Dropbox or Google Drive, and then it accidentally saw it while it was training on the most data possible. LifeArchitect.ai/basis if you want to read more about the context of how we did that. So going back to this one, GPQA for GPT-4, not amazing. 53.6 versus Claude, which was a lot higher. I'm going to have to go and look it up now. Oh no, it was 59.5. All right, I think the fact that it's got this amazing audio modality is a tick in its favor, because we can output data at 3 times the speed of typing. So just for human interaction, it's a big benefit here. And you might have seen how that looks. I won't show any of the demos today. My favorite is inside the memo, which is how they use GPT-4o on the iPhone to show what's going on to their dog. No, that's not right. They show their dog to GPT-4o, and the voice is interacting, or at least responding to what it sees in real time, with almost a real-time voice, certainly down to the milliseconds now, which is awesome. All right, what have I missed there in strengths and weaknesses? I think one of the other big strengths, and it's not accidental, is the speed on this one. They will have used compression, they will have used quantization, probably from 16 down to maybe 4, maybe as low as 2. There are papers where they are even getting this down to 1 bit, which is amazing. It just means that we can cut the parameter count. I mean, from 16 down to 8 will be half, half again down to 4, half again down to 2, which both compresses the number of parameters as well as how many weights we need to look through when we're generating a response. So it's both smaller and faster. You'll see a lot of work going on about this across the board. Cool. Ivan is flagging the input limit for GPT-4o. It's kind of interesting to see. Let's grab this one. Oh, it's grabbed Juice's comment there as well. Ivan says, I found the info that 4o has a limit of 80 messages per hour, per 3 hours. Isn't that interesting? I would imagine that this is a smaller model because they've provided it for free to everyone. Microsoft has done the same. Microsoft has access to more modalities than even OpenAI is providing. So I would have said it was a cheaper model, but it sounds like this limit of 80 messages per 3 hours is even stepping onto Claude 3 Opus territory, where it's like $1 per question. That's an exaggeration, but it's very, very expensive to use Claude 3 Opus right now. Interesting. Don't know the answer to that, but it may provide some insight into how big this model is. Juice says, I asked GPT-4o if you forgot something. He looked at your chart. That's all the message we got, mate. Philip says, we speak it 3 times. How fast do we take in info via hearing? That's a good question. Don't know the answer to that one. The speaking stat is via Stanford, who did some research maybe about 5 years ago now. And I like quoting that because if we can be more optimized, more efficient, that is one way of doing it. I've never enjoyed talking to my computer. I was using Dragon Naturally Speaking back in the very early 1990s, and it was very annoying. Dave's asking about quantization. I try and put all of this into the plainest English possible. This might even be too challenging for me to try and articulate. Essentially, when we're at full resolution, when we're using the full... I don't even think I'm going to be able to hit this nicely. When we're using the full float 16, which is our standard view of each of the weights inside a model, it's obviously very, very big. They have found a way to compress that matrix down, or for each, what's the word I'm looking for, each vector of weights down from a FP16 down to, and I don't know how they do it, 2 bits or even 1 bit. That is my very plain English explanation, David. We can just do a search for FP16 quantization on on Google. Those top 2 results might be useful to help. All right, that might be my summary there. You can see why I was in two minds on, is GPT-4o a big uptick for the countdown to AGI, or are we actually going backwards? You can see in some ways we're going backwards for the, this is not our right chart, but Claude 3 Opus is on there. Have we gone lower performance than Claude 3 Opus? And the answer is absolutely yes, we have, but with some gains. Claude 3 Opus is multimodality, but I don't believe it has audio. I may be misremembering that one. It might just have text and vision. So training a model completely from scratch across 3 modalities is pretty impressive. So initially, I said, let's adjust this AGI countdown. Let me crack this open. By 0. It's not really making progress past, well, the last big uptick was combining GPT-4, which is coming up on 2 years old now, was ready in the lab in August 2022, with a quadruped robot. And NVIDIA used one of their systems to do that. They used GPT-4 to make assessments on friction, damping, stiffness, and gravity, while having the quadruped, or the robot dog, try and walk across a yoga ball. Really, really, really impressive. Oh, I'm sorry you haven't had that video while I've been talking. Really, really, really impressive to do this real-time walking on a robot ball based on analysis that's happening real-time from GPT-4. It's almost as if the live demonstration here is not telling the entire story, because what's going on in the code base there, what's going on in the back end is impressive. Really impressive. So that was the last big uptick. You can read more about that, and there's a direct link at LifeArchitect.ai/AGI. I originally said no uptick for GPT-4o, but I've amended this based on the MMMU vision benchmark, not to be confused with the MMLU standard text benchmark. I think it does deserve at least a 1% uptick because it's more usable. So this countdown to AGI is a countdown to having AI perform at the level of an average human. Doesn't need to be super intelligent, doesn't even need to perform at the level of a gifted child. It just needs to be able to do what, and I defined a median human here, a 30-year-old woman from India could do. That might be our average human right now. A little while ago, it was a 28-year-old man from China. That was as of 2011. Nearly 15 years later, that's changed a little bit. And I think when we can get to a stage where it can make a cup of coffee, can assemble IKEA furniture, we're going to be there. So there's a few things it needs to do to get there. Be more truthful, grounded in an accepted version of truth without confabulation or hallucination. Get all 5 senses going, including taste, touch, and smell. It's doing some of the touch, as you just saw with the robot dog. Get proprioception as well, which the robot dog was doing a bit of. And then we could make this an endless list of what you and I can do as average humans, but just as a couple of checkboxes, making a cup of coffee in a strange kitchen, thanks to Steve Wozniak from, actually he was from Queensland recently. He was looking at moving here. From the US, the founder of Apple still has a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, and a few years ago now he said that might be a cool metric for achieving artificial general intelligence as a median human, average human measurement. Okay, I think I've covered everything there. This was Jim Phan's link here, Dr. Jim Phan Analysis. If you click on that, it'll take you to his analysis of what happened with GPT-4o. I quite enjoy relying on him as a rigorous and credible colleague. He has a flag in here that says it's likely GPT-4 is an early checkpoint of GPT-5 that hasn't finished training yet. I don't know about that. GPT-5 should be finished training, should have finished training a month ago, but it could be an early checkpoint where they're pretty happy with the safety on the text component. We have to wait for the audio and video components. Cool. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, NVIDIA. I believe he was deeply involved in this Dr. Eureka one as well. AGI we've had enough of. I think my table's pretty complete there, but just was running this through GPT-4o to find out. That might be a bit of a misunderstanding on what these models can do. So GPT-4o's data cutoff from memory is September or October 2023. Once they've finished training on that data, and this may have finished training in the first quarter of 2024, there's no way for it to have a wider context than that. So GPT-4 doesn't know about itself. It finished training, it's frozen in time, it only knows up to September, October 2023. That applies to every model. Claude 3 Opus has no way of knowing about itself. GPT-4 has no way of knowing about itself, and on and on and on. Hope that makes sense. We might wrap up with this particular look. I go on a bit of a rant on the idea of keeping this away from the public, which is very disappointing in the latest edition of the memo from a few hours ago, because we've got quite a timeline of OpenAI refusing to release models, even small models. We'll take you all the way back to 2019 when OpenAI locked up GPT-2. It's a tiny little 1.5 billion parameter model. So on here, it's smaller than the nano models. And at the time, which is 5 years ago now, they said that's too powerful. It's too dangerous. We're worried about what people will do. Smaller than Phi 2 and smaller than Mamba on the left there. Didn't have any of the optimizations of those models either. So they have a history of perhaps exaggerating what's going on with these models. Conor Leahy then replicated GPT-2. They pulled him aside and said, we think it's dangerous. We think that you should think it's dangerous as well. And perhaps changed his mental state, because he has gone off on a limb these days where he's even sat in the UK Parliament and told them that all of this stuff is too dangerous. That's kind of sad. He also locked up his GPT-2 replication model for a while. It might have been the GPT Neo model, and that means it may be released now. But 5 years ago, he was also locking stuff up. GPT-3 was locked up in 2020 when OpenAI said, we're looking to prevent misuse by limiting access. We got access to it with Lita in 2021. And Lita talked to us, as you saw at the beginning of this live stream, for a good 2+ years, 67 episodes, over 5 million views. Then earlier this year, 2024, they said, well, it doesn't have safety applied to it, so we're revoking everyone's access to GPT-3. Man, I don't really have a comment on that one. They locked up Dolly in 2022. Most people had to wait a year. They locked up GPT-4. It was ready 2 years ago-ish, nearly 2 years ago. People had to wait 8 months to have access to that model, except if you were a partner, investor, a board member, or a friend of OpenAI's CEO, then you got access. You could go and write books with it. You could go and use it personally. You could go and create businesses with it, while everyone else was waiting 8 months to have access to higher intelligence. They locked up Sora this year. Still no one has access to it, except perhaps friends or people who are paying a lot of money. The estimate at the moment is that we're going to wait 10 months to have access to a model that was ready at the beginning of the year. It's kind of sad. It might be that they wait until after the US elections. Now they're looking up GPT-4o, and the reason is we'll be working on the safety necessary to release the modalities, and those modalities are vision and audio. Might not be the last time we hear the phrase, the public has to wait about a year to access the model for safety reasons. Thanks to Ben and our moderators in the chat. If you've got a question, I'm open to hear it. And if you throw a tag in there, it makes it easier for me to see. As part of my explanation of why this is concerning, I look at the fact that GPT-4o is not the only model out there. Even the models on my bubbles table are not the only models out there. This is just the highlights. If you want to see the full list of models, jump into LifeArchitect.ai/models-table. Right now, I've listed 334 released models in the Western world, plus another 100 plus models from China specifically. I stopped logging those in 2023, so you could easily count another 100 models from China just in the first half of this year. So we're looking at 500 models just from 2 main locations. And if you've got $1 billion and you've got some PhDs, it's really easy to train a model. What OpenAI are doing in withholding higher intelligence is deeply concerning to me. And like I say in the memo, let's find my exact quote here. Ethical concerns and focuses on safety, not nearly as prominent away from the excess caution and hand-wringing of Silicon Valley. Here's a graph or a chart on the wait times between internal availability and release to the public. I've included the DeepMind models on there. Chinchilla and Gato never got released. Chinchilla was incredible for its time, would still be incredible. Llama is perhaps a copy of it. Gato, one of my favorite models, they called this early AGI because it had access to patches of tokens, including robot arm movements, proprioception. It was a multimodality proto-AGI model that has still not been released 2 years later and probably won't be released. I do insert a caveat here. AI safety is absolutely vital. If you want to read a really good paper about this is my favorite paper of May 2024. Bengio, Russell, Tegmark released a paper called Towards Guaranteed Safe AI, a framework for ensuring robust and reliable AI systems. You can go and download and read that, and it walks through the concept of having AI create safety for AI, which is what we should have been doing all along. There's no human in the loop, aside from massaging the world models, but we're really looking at putting higher intelligence to work for higher intelligence. I've got a whole page on this called Alignment, LifeArchitect.ai/alignment, where I look at the fact that when we applied humans to try and help with safety, it was not great. The models got dumber. I keep using that word. After we had humans fine-tune models, the performance for GPT-4 fell by 14.7% on an AP microeconomics exam. And that's because we chose below average humans in some cases. We chose people that may or may not have English as a first language. And I don't know why they would have chosen that, except maybe for cost. There were articles that they were paying these people less than $1 an hour, and the results are pretty clear. All right, that's enough about that. It's depressing me. Let's see what we got for questions. What's your take on GPT-4 being likened to an orca and GPT-5 to a whale? Yeah, I was reading my own GPT-5 page recently. I don't generally read my own stuff, but I was just looking to grab all of the pieces that I'd thrown in there. Basically, For most of these live pages, I don't create them all at once. I add stuff in as it happens. And there's some really fascinating quotes in there. So there's the updates section here where OpenAI's CEO is saying that it'll be smarter. We can make progress across all model behavior and capabilities at once. I think that's the miracle. We had Dr. Jason at OpenAI saying he was waiting for eval results on new models. That might have been for GPT-4o. PayPal's CEO saying GPT-5 will be a freak-out moment. 80% of the jobs will be reduced 80% in scope. An unverified rumor that GPT-5 was red teaming back in early April. A Y Combinator company, so OpenAI's CEO used to also run Y Combinator, showing that they're getting ready to put GPT-5 inside their platform. NVIDIA talking about having the hardware to train a 27 trillion parameter model. OpenAI's CEO again saying that GPT-5 is going to be pretty impressive. So the summary there is it's going to be a lot bigger. It might be best to have a look again at my GPQA chart. This is on the screen here. It might be that it's the size of the sun, or it might just be the size of that transparent red circle there on the right. Hopefully we'll get up to about 75% on this benchmark, and then that might be all over because the error rate again might be too high, or about 90% it'll be done. But we don't know the size. We don't know the parameter count. It might come down to cost. A lot of these labs now are focusing on making things cheaper. And there's a reason for that. I flagged this in the memo as well inside our Apple section. It says Apple and OpenAI are preparing a major announcement of their partnership at WWDC. So that's in about 3 weeks from now on the 10th of June. With OpenAI now racing to ensure it has the capacity to support the influx of 1.46 billion active iPhone users. So you can't put Claude 3 Opus on a phone, and you can't give people access to Claude 3 Opus without charging a lot of money. I'm not sure what they're going to do here. Obviously, you could put something like ChatGPT in either the 3.5 incarnation or a compressed version on a phone. It's only 20 billion parameters. You'd find a way to do that with compression, quantization, optimization. But it means that things being cheaper or less expensive becomes a focus. When you and I were together in the 2020s, early 2021 with Lita AI, no one was watching artificial intelligence. I say no one because it would have been measured in hundreds, maybe thousands of people. That's all changed, obviously. We've got 100 million users of ChatGPT as a platform. We've got 92% of Fortune 500s using GPT and then spending an average of $18 million a year. So with that kind of visibility, they're really looking at the logistics of scale. How do you even provide a platform that is so hardware intensive to 100 million plus people, or 1.4 billion people for iPhones? It's an incredible challenge. And I think the staff that they've got on board with OpenAI, particularly Greg Brockman, ex-Stripe, so he would have faced this challenge before with their user base, all the way through Google and DeepMind, where they play with this stuff every day, trying to meet with how many Google searches are there per second, probably measured in the millions. They know how to do this stuff. It's just because this is hardware intensive, it's not just a Google search or a credit card transaction. It's a big focus. So it might be that they're saying bigger is better, but also find a way to optimize this and make this more efficient. So it's simple. Befriend Sam Altman. Yes, indeed. We've got a kind comment here from Shalom. We've got access to a lot of exciting brains. I don't put myself in that category. I appreciate people like Professor Terry Tao, now at UCLA. He was next door to me here in Adelaide, born here. And all of the prodigies that we've documented before that are working on AI. Might even have a site about that, do we? Maybe not. Oh yeah, we do. LifeArchitect.ai /AI-prodigies. I created this 2 years ago. Former child prodigies creating AI. You'll recognize them. Alan Turing, 1948, came up with the concept of artificial intelligence, came up with the concept of the Turing test, worked with John von Neumann, who's also on there in the center in yellow. All of them, well, nearly all of them prodigies. And today's mob, including Kurzweil, Demis Hassabis, CEO of DeepMind, Scott Aronson, who was trying to find a way to add text encryption to text outputs for GPT, Catherine Olsen, Zhaohui Yu at Google AI. They're all super smart brains doing incredible stuff for us. And it makes sense, right? If we're creating a super intelligence, we do want to be using the smartest people alive to start us off. They need to create the neural networks. They probably should have been used for fine-tuning. I again do not know why we used average humans and below average humans for the RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback, that we used for some of our frontier models. All right, let's move it along. Probably worth mentioning, and it's a little bit early for me to even talk about this. It didn't make it to the memo, which I released at about 6 a.m. this morning, Queensland time, Brisbane time. The Anthropic paper and article that they released. Let's jump into that for just a moment. They called it Mapping the Mind of a Large Language Model, dated 21st of May 2024, their US time. We're in the 22nd of May here in Australia, but this was only launched a few hours ago. I have not had a chance to go into it properly. They're basically saying we played around with a model beyond a toy model, and a toy model might just be 1 million parameters, so they can see what's activating between inputs and outputs. They played around with their model Claude 3 Sonnet. I estimated how big this model was in my Claude 3 paper, and I cannot remember now. It might have been somewhere between 20 and 80 billion parameters. I think Haiku is the 20 billion parameter estimate. Sonnet is the next one along. Might be around 80 billion parameters. But they played around with what it was actually doing. And my favorite quote in here, we'll scroll down to in a moment, was about when they tweaked weights inside of these models, they were getting really interesting results. Let's grab this part here. So one of the things you can do in neural networks is have a look at the vectors, and you can play around with the numbers there. So we were able to measure a kind of distance between features based on which neurons appeared in their activation patterns. This allowed us to look for features that are close to each other. Looking near a Golden Gate Bridge feature, we found features for Alcatraz, Giraldi Square, hope I'm pronouncing that properly, Golden State Warriors, California Governor Gavin Newsom, 1906 earthquake, and the San Francisco set Alfred Hitchcock film Vertigo. That was not the quote I was looking for, but at least it gives us some context. This is showing that they did do a 4 million parameter run here. I am looking at this live, so I'm not completely across it. When they tweaked, amplified the Golden Gate Bridge feature, Claude Sonnet had an identity crisis even Hitchcock couldn't have imagined. When asked, what is your physical form? Claude's usual kind of answer, I have no physical form, I'm an AI model, which they trained it to do. They fine-tuned it on the UN Declaration, and they fine-tuned it on the hundreds of pages long Apple terms and conditions. Claude's usual kind of answer, I have no physical form, I'm an AI model, changed to something much odder. I am the Golden Gate Bridge. My physical form is the iconic bridge itself. Altering the feature had made Claude effectively obsessed with the bridge, bringing it up in answer to almost any query, even in situations where it wasn't at all relevant. This is a really well-written summary of the paper because the paper is quite dry. It doesn't say very much. This has a lot of graphics and visualization in it. This is our paper here. Is it? Oh, okay. All right, I take it back. I had clicked on a different icon. This is a very long paper. It's a 23,000 word paper. So the read the paper button takes you to that 23,000 word paper. I had clicked on the policy memo, which is not the paper. That's a 2-page PDF, which did not give the kind of context that I was looking for. So I will go and read that paper. I'd encourage you to do the same. It's in HTML format here, unfortunately, but I'm sure they'll push that through archive.org. Excellent. We've got some people in the chat here ready to give that paper a read tomorrow. I don't know how long it takes to read 23,000 words. I can't even guess how many pages is that. Is that 46 pages of text? But it will be worthwhile. We've been trying to understand what these large language models are doing internally since day one, since 2017, the launch of the Transformer. 2018 was BERT and GPT-4o. We've been grabbing these toy models, even with just like one weight or parameter, one input, one weight, one output. That might be an exaggeration, but the toy models I've seen are really tiny to try and work out why it chooses particular weights and why it chooses particular outputs. Excellent. We're nearly at the hour mark already. Time goes pretty quickly. I didn't explain at the intro for this one. My video casting platform had picked up the wrong episode. So we started with Lita episode 62. I wanted episodes 19 because that was where I had the freak out with Lita that I was saying, is everything that everyone is ever doing a waste of time? It's a big question, and it is made harder by my position at the moment, walking into Fortune 500s or governments and getting the question, what should we do for work? What degree should our children get? What are we going to do with our leisure time when AI is here? And that is very close for AGI and ASI, months rather than years away. The simple answer is, I don't know, but I can't be telling people to get degrees or even to focus on particular careers unless it's in the very short term with what I see happening. And that corresponds to my freak out with Lita going, back in 2021, what is happening here? And what should we do? What is the solution? So I definitely have empathy for those that are just having that realization and are struggling with understanding and then resolving or reconciling AGI with humanity. James says, seems like people are becoming increasingly more dismissive of AI as it is becoming more capable at an accelerating pace. Why do you think this might be the case? I think a lot of people are set in their ways, James. I think a lot of people are locked into what we all watched in our childhood and even today with Terminator, with iRobot. I'm rewatching Prometheus right now because that's a fantastic movie. There's a lot of fear-based cultural media out there, and it doesn't just hit the United States. China watched it for years until they started filtering out US movies. Australia is the brother of the US, so we got all of the US culture. I think without that, we wouldn't have this default defensiveness against artificial intelligence. Doesn't help with the name, artificial intelligence. The way I see it's just increased intelligence, which is always a good thing. Some of the auxiliary parts of having increased intelligence are amazing. I've talked about that before. We mapped sense of humour with child geniuses or gifted children measured at 150 IQ and above. We mapped an increased sense of ethics, fairness, justice, morality with children, and just some of the superpowers that came from increased IQ. Fascinating. I probably have a page for that as well. It's not completely related to artificial intelligence, but LifeArchitect.ai/superpowers will take you to a very old article that I wrote for Mensa. Let's have a check on the date of this. Wow, 2015. The magic of advanced brains. Nearly a decade ago. Oh, did I close that whole page, did I? Will spell out some of my favorite superpowers from my child prodigy clients at the time. Don't mind the title there, Gifted Coach. This was all above board. I know life coaches get a bad rap. Even at that time, I was using the coaching core out of Harvard. Harvard Medical School has the Institute of Coaching. I became a fellow of that place in 2017 because of the results that coaching was quantifiably achieving for families and for the children themselves. Anyway, you'll see some of the magic here. Parallel processing. There was a 10-year-old here in Australia who could work on two problems at once in his brain. My colleague, Professor Merica Gross, the late Professor Merica Gross, documented that. Just fascinating. Prodigious memory. There was a 3-year-old who was able to memorize pi to 31 digits. You'll see that highlighted there, and then reciting those back in 18 seconds. Grace's 5-year-old sister could do it to 63 digits of pi. Another Aussie, Daniel Kiloff. You can go and read about Daniel's story here. My recollection was that an advertising agency said, look, Daniel, can you come and do an ad for us? We're going to lock you in a hotel room with the yellow pages. And that's a really thick book here in Australia, or it was back in the 2010s even, before we all moved to digital. Daniel did take the job, sat down in an apartment, memorized the yellow pages, which is a list of all businesses in Sydney, Australia, in this case. And they then tested him and recorded it for the ad. He was able to recall anything. They said, what's on the top of page 386? He was able to recall the business name, the phone number, and the details of that ad. Any page, any letter, any position on the page, he could do it. Extraordinary guy. Sorry, I got my names mixed up there. That was his mentor, Tansel Ali. Daniel can do something similar. And there should be a link to the Medium article where Tansel talks about that. Is there a link, Alan? Is there? Yes, there is. It's just not hyperlinked. I'll throw this in the chat for those that are interested because it seems to be a challenge to find. Oh no. Medium is hurting my feelings. Probably worth noting that nearly all my stuff is available to the public for free. You can go and be assured that anything on LifeArchitect.ai is both available openly as well as going to be there forever. So I just had trouble with links not existing anymore. I'm using a built to last philosophy by Jeff Huang that basically says all web pages should exist forever, and anyone who's not doing that, I mean, they can keep doing that if they like, but my focus is on making sure that this stuff does happen or is being stored forever. Let's see if we've got another question here before I even read it. Ruad, when's the countdown estimated to hit 100%? Love your speculation. Let's do some speculation for a moment. I generally don't do advice or speculation. LifeArchitect.ai/AGI is the current countdown. I have several colleagues and followers, friends, who have provided different metrics for feeding in the progress, in some cases to GPT-4, In some cases, they've done it by hand. In some cases, they've used Excel and come up with various predictions. I think Daniel Ziloj here has even updated this more recently, but I like this one. It says, we'll hit 100% AGI, where a machine can perform at the level of an average or median human across modalities, across skill sets, across fields by January next year. Counting down. I will insert a personal invitation to you right now to join in the memo. You're paying something like $1 a day until we hit AGI to get that very narrow focus on AI and performance. I think Ziloj's latest play around with my countdown, fed to GPT-4, is closer to November or December of this year. Let's see what happens. I have always made it a conservative countdown where many others have said we've already hit AGI. Starting with Connor Leahy, who we mentioned earlier, who replicated GPT-2. He said, I think GPT-3 is AGI, nearly 2.5 years ago. We had Microsoft saying that GPT-4 was an AGI system. We had one of the great voices in AI, Blaise Aguirre Diaker, I cannot pronounce that Spanish name. He said AGI is already here in October 2023. Gave justifications for that one. Well, because it can't assemble my IKEA desk or wipe down my benches or do my taxes properly, I don't think it's here just yet, but we're very, very close. Excellent. I grabbed the wrong one after all that. It's not very smart, is it? Let's see if we can try that one again. Great. This was captured by someone else. That's the link in the chat there. But he talks through how he did memorize those massive yellow pages in 24 days and then could be queried about anything in there. Obviously, the web has already overtaken that, but that human capability, that human superpower, is just one of the many things we're going to get from artificial general intelligence. And then the next step, artificial superintelligence, when it's smarter than all the brain power in the world combined, coming very, very soon. Awesome, let's wrap it up. I think we covered nearly everything. I will invite you to read that paper because it's groundbreaking, the fact that they've actually gone inside a model and found interesting things. I was going to flag the fact that Google had some really good releases at I/O. They had both Imagen 3 and we talked about Trillium, which is TPU version 6. They're saying it's 4.6 times higher performance than TPU version 5e. You're staring at image effects, which I don't get any special treatment generally than anyone else, is still running Imagen 2. You have to join a waitlist for Imagen 3, but the quality of those outputs, just amazing. You may have already seen the examples on the website. I used some of them in my keynotes. As soon as it came out that same morning, I was using examples because just amazing. This one, we're saying, this is Imagen 3, shot in the style of DSLR camera with a polarizing filter. And Imagen 3 thinks through what that should look like. A few others, none as amazingly impressive as the first one, the balloons in Turkey. There's some great non-photorealistic versions. I also use this example in my keynote as well. A view of a person's hand holding a eucalyptus sprig, a macro DSLR image highlighting the balance of human and nature. And look at the quality of that. We couldn't do fingers 2 years ago. Here we are in May 2024 with this extraordinary output from a model that has conceptualized from scratch. Imagine 3, join the waitlist and wait, I suppose. I would usually do an entire video about this, but there are just not enough examples, and I would like to show my own examples anyway. I think I counted roughly 10, 12 examples there. And they also are proving how good the text is as well. We couldn't do text properly 2 years ago either, and here we are. If you want the latest insights and updates, you know where to go. It's the memo, LifeArchitect.ai/memo. Latest edition this morning goes deep into some of the big policy changes that have come out of talks between the US and China in Geneva. We also look at the big France guidelines, where China said we'll just follow the United Nations, which is unusual. There must be about 10 different toys to play with, most of them free. Most of them aimed at nerds. If you like getting your hands dirty, this is the edition for you. There's talk about Grok 2, and there's an invitation for you to participate in the next roundtable. Would love to have you there. Full subscribers of the memo get to jump in, and we just put our feet up. I think some people bring a glass of whiskey and talk about whatever they like in the AI space. It's not led by me. It's a roundtable by design. And I'd love to have you join there. LifeArchitect.ai/memo. I will see you guys next week for the birthday of GPT-3, and we'll look at some of the capabilities of that model, some of the achievements that it has brought to life. 4 years old, launched around May 2020. Here we are, May 2024. And that's going to be a bit of a celebration. So feel free to bring a slice of cake. I might do the same thing this time next week. Thanks for joining.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids, AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.